What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We are here talking the main slate for week 19 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. We got a 3-gamer on Sunday here, and it's honestly not too bad. I am pretty excited for this Giants and Vikings game. The other ones, I don't expect to be entirely too close. Bengals should beat the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, and also the Bills are facing Skylar Thompson at quarterback, so there should be no issues there. But that middle game is one I am certainly looking forward to. But anyway, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And in these videos specifically, what I'd like to do is go position by position with the small player pool that I have interest in. Although since this is only a 3-game slate, we'll probably just throw everybody on there and we'll go through it quickly. But it'll lamp as we progress through it, more so for a single entry tournament build. Then at the end, I'll run my optimizer to see who's popping the most as of right now with the current projections and ownership projections that I currently have set in place. And hey, if that all sounds fine and dandy to you, we can do me one small thing in return. That's leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you are new, and feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say. Be nice, be mean, I don't really care either way, but I would love to hear from you. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And I have to mention, if you want access to the sheets, projections, optimizer, ownership, Discord community, all that fun stuff, link is down below in the description or the pinned comment. Let's cover the NBA each and every single day in a similar fashion, and we have NASCAR starting very soon, which is our main thing, so I'm obviously very excited about it. But anyway, let's talk some quarterbacks here. And up top, we got a good one. Josh Allen, $7,900, draws a great matchup versus Miami. The only concern here is that this game might not stay that close. There's no Tua, unfortunately, because we just had this matchup around Christmas time, I believe, on that 3-game slate. It was the night game and ended up popping off. Allen had a great game. But Skylar Thompson, you just can't really expect much here, and Vegas would agree. There are 13.5-point dogs on the road in Buffalo. Allen does have the highest implied team total in the slate at 28.5, and he's played some great football this year. Not quite Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, kind of similar with Joe Burrow, in my opinion. Not quite there, but he was still great for fantasy purposes all season long. 270 yards through the air per game, and also 50 on the ground with half a rushing touchdown. And the Miami Dolphins are allowing the third most points per game at the quarterback position. Plus, you have Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in football, to pair with them. You have a high upside guy, but a low floor guy, I should say, with Gabe Davis. Isaiah McKenzie may or may not play, dealing with an issue there, but they did add Cole Beasley recently. And you have Khalil Shakur, who could fill in nicely if he happens to miss. Then you have Dawson Knox at tight end as well. So do like Allen. If you have the money for him, he's definitely the best QB slate projection-wise. Joe Burrow at $6,900. I'm probably not going to get there. Not saying he's a bad play necessarily. I think he's kind of interesting in tournaments, but the same thing can be said for why maybe you don't want to go too heavy on Buffalo because you don't think Miami can keep it close, and maybe they don't have to keep their foot on the throttle the entire time. Same can be said for Baltimore, who's going to be without Lamar Jackson, so it definitely hurts their upside, but still a pretty nice 24.5 implied team total, 8.5-point spread. I know the Bengals are going to be without a couple linemen, which could definitely hurt them quite a bit. We've seen Burrow with the bad offensive line before, and it hasn't been too pretty. But it's just at his price, I would think I'd rather just get the Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones personally. So if you're trying to get a little bit contrarian in tournaments, you can play Burrow with Jamar Chase. I mean, they have all the upside in the world, run it back with Mark Andrews, but it's not my most favorite thing to do on this slate. But if you're playing 150 lineups, yeah, I'd want to get to some exposure of Joe Burrow. Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, both guys I think are very playable. This is my favorite game on the slate, 48.5-point over-under, which is the highest, actually highest of the entire wild card round if you look at all 6 games. So definitely going to have quite a bit of ownership. We're also in a dome, so have no weather concerns. And we know Minnesota can put up a lot of points, but they can also give up a lot of points. I mean, their defense is absolutely awful, which makes their games always fun for DFS purposes. And these teams faced off versus each other, I believe, the week of, was it Christmas or around New Year's? Can't remember exactly. That week's kind of a blur. But ended up having a lot of points scored in that game, and I would not be surprised if it happens once again. The Vikings did win 27-24 in that matchup. So let's start with Kirk Cousins here first. He's at $5,900. Gets a pretty good matchup here versus the New York Giants. Both these defenses are not that great. New York is 22nd DVA versus the pass, but kind of mid-pack when it comes to fantasy points allowed per game to the quarterback position. And I should mention, this game is not at 1 p.m., which we all know 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins plays a lot better than anything else. But I am willing to try to look past that. I know this is a primetime game and it's not at 1 p.m., so I would say to not play Kirk Cousins, but sometimes you have to try to look outside of those variable factors and just look on paper. This is a pretty good matchup, but it wouldn't surprise me if Kirk Cousins just happens to suck because that's what he does in these types of games. But I'm hoping he doesn't because I have a lot of interest. He might be my favorite quarterback here. It's tough between him and Daniel Jones, excluding Josh Allen because he's the obvious play, but when you factor in the price point, But Kirk Cousins on the year, 270 passing yards per game. Obviously, isn't going to offer you anything on the ground, but he's got great weapons to get the ball to. Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in football. TJ Hawkinson, who exploded in this game just a few weeks ago. You have Dalvin Cook out of the backfield potentially. KJ Osborne, Adam Thielen. So no shortage of weapons here for Kirk Cousins. Makes it very easy to stack. And then on the flip side of this game, we have Daniel Jones at $5,600. Who might end up being a little bit more popular just because he has rushing upside, which can boost that floor. Because on the year, I know we all think of Josh Allen as an elite fantasy quarterback because of what he can do on the ground. Obviously great with the air as well, but Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. But don't forget about Daniel Jones. He averages nearly 45 rushing yards per game, which is only a few off of Josh Allen. So Daniel Jones, a very safe play, great matchup versus Minnesota. He played very well in this matchup just a few weeks ago, had over 300 yards through the air and good chunk of fantasy points as well. And Minnesota allowing the 5th most points per game to the quarterback position, as well as being 26th DVA versus the pass. So I am fine with Daniel Jones or Kirk Cousins in this game. Jones might have the safer floor, but both guys look pretty good to me. I am not playing Tyler Huntley or whatever quarterback Baltimore wants to throw out there, but I just know it's not going to be Lamar Jackson, so I don't really have any interest there. And there is absolutely no chance I am playing Skylar Thompson. And moving over to our lineup, I'm probably picking between Allen, Kirk Cousins, or Daniel Jones here. I think Daniel Jones is going to be a little bit higher than Cousins. And since this is not a cash build, it's a single entry build, we'll take the lower end of the two. I'm telling you right now, though, Jones probably makes more sense. I think he's a bit safer. But let's roll with Captain Kirk. He's below 6K, and I'm loading up on some Vikings pass catchers and just this game in general, so it makes sense. And moving on to our running backs, we'll start with the stud of the slate up top. Saquon Barkley, 79 on DK, 88 over on FanDuel. If you're playing cash games, pretty much a lock here. And even in tournaments, I'm probably just going to lock him in. I'll deal with the consequences later if he happens to bust. But he played well versus Minnesota a handful of weeks ago. And he even works well as a run back option since he's involved in the passing game as well. It's just, we're taking the volume play in a great matchup. One of the better running backs in football. About 18.5 carries per game on the season. Close to 4.5, 5 targets. That's a pretty hefty workload. Plus matchup, high scoring game. Correlates well with my lineup. Yeah, I'm playing a lot of Saquon. On the flip side of this game, we have Dalvin Cook, $7,100. Don't like him as much as Saquon, but draws a dream matchup as the Giants are dead last, 32nd DVA versus the run, and allowing nearly 120 rushing yards per game. Not quite the pass catcher as a guy like Saquon Barkley or obviously like CMC or Eckler, but he can be used in the passing game. We saw him in that one Colts game where he took like a 60, 70-yard touchdown to the house through the air. Not like it was a fade or anything, but he'll get some dump offs here and there. So I think Dalvin Cook's obviously a fine play. Never really a fan of playing two running backs in the same game, but on these small slates, we can't really get too picky. And since Saquon Barkley will be using the passing game, I think it's fine. Joe Mixon, $6,800. If you want to get off Dalvin Cook because you have a full onslaught of Vikings pass catchers as your stack, I don't mind the pivot to Mixon here since the Bengals are 8.5 point favorites at home. 24.5 implied team total. Like his chances of finding the end zone. I think he's okay. He's just not been efficient whatsoever this season. I believe he's averaging 3.9 yards per carry, which isn't good. But he has been getting a decent amount of targets this season, nearly 5 per game and 15 carries on the ground. If we can get 15, 20 touches out of Mixon as a home favorite, probably going to fall into the end zone. Don't think he's a bad pivot off of Dalvin Cook. But that's only if you have a Vikings onslaught of passing options and you don't want to just go all the way in the Vikings offense. That's where I think the pivot's necessary. But if you don't have the Vikings stack, the passing-wise, I think Dalvin Cook's a pretty good play because I think the Vikings are going to put up points, so it's got to come from somewhere. J.K. Dobbins at $5,700, very talented back. I just don't see a lot of appeal here. Only a 16-point implied team total, 8.5 point dog on the road. Probably going to be a pass for me. Singletary and James Cook, the Buffalo running backs, they're 13.5 point home favorites. I think one of these guys can have a solid game. I would lean towards Devin Singletary being that guy. But it's probably going to be a bit of a split for the most part, probably a slightly into Singletary. Probably just a messy situation overall. I don't really have a ton of interest either way, but if I had to pick, it'll probably be Singletary for me. They're more so 150 max or 20 max kind of guys. If I'm playing single entry, I'm probably not taking a chance on a Buffalo running back. But if you don't have Josh Allen, they're going to score points, so it might make sense to grab a Buffalo RB in that situation, which I guess we're probably going to be in that situation, and we'll see what fits as we go through it. Jeff Wilson with no Raheem Mostert. I think he's a fine value play. Should get a couple of dump offs here. They're 13.5 point dogs, so I can't really see him getting 20 plus carries here because they're going to have to play catch up. But I just really can't expect much from this Miami offense. So he's kind of just there as a value piece fit in. But I'd almost rather take Singletary at $5,500 because there should be more scoring opportunities. And then after that, I can't really see playing any of these backup RBs, maybe besides James Cook, just to get exposure to Buffalo. But outside of that, Wilson's probably the lowest I want to go. And moving back over to our build, like I said, Saquon's kind of a lock for me on this slate. And since I'm going to have Kirk Cousins and a bunch of pass catchers, I'm going to skip Dalvin Cook here. And I'll pivot down to Joe Mixon at $6,100, save a couple dollars, and at least it gives me some Bengals exposure. And moving on to our pass catchers, I try to keep this as simple as possible because we have a ton of options on the slate, all very solid. It all comes down to who's my quarterback, who are my stacking options with them, who are my run back guys, or just games am I stacking in general. One-offs are fine, but I'm not going to go dive into one-on-one matchups. I think that's a bit of a waste of time. So let's sort this by team just to make it easier so we're not bouncing around, which we have the worst wide receiver group here first of Baltimore, which I'm just not playing these guys. Simple as that. No Demarcus Robinson for me, no Sammy Watkins, I will pass. Buffalo looks a little bit better here. So we have Stephon Diggs at 77, Gabe Davis at 49, Isaiah McKenzie at 34. And then we have Cole Beasley, welcome back to the team, and Khalil Shakir at $3,000. So the question mark here is if Isaiah McKenzie is going to play or not. Last I saw, he did not practice Thursday or Friday after picking up an injury on Wednesday. I have a lot of him in best ball, so that is concerning. I'm hoping even if he sits out this week, that's kind of a precaution because they should win this game and he's more used down the stretch. But the two main threats here, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, obviously excellent plays. Miami has been really bad versus wide receiver positions so far this year and the pass in general. And let me pull up their statistics on the year because I think we all know the Vegas totals by this point. But Diggs, he's always going to be busy. 9.5 targets per game, nearly 3/4 of a touchdown per game, which is actually very, very good. And he is certainly one of the top options on the slate. Now, if you can't afford Diggs and you want to get some Buffalo exposure, Gabe Davis definitely makes sense as a tournament play. We know he's got huge big play upside, 15.4 ADOT on the year, 1,400 air yards and half a receiving touchdown per game. But his floor can be very low. And if they do get ahead early in this game, that could be kind of dangerous for Gabe Davis. So we'll see. He's always got a threat to catch a bomb, which puts him in play for tournaments. But outside of that, can always be a bit of a risky play. And then the 3K options I don't really see being too viable on the slate unless McKenzie is fully good to go. That's a pretty fair price point. Jamar Chase and the Bengals, $8,100 for him. T. Higgins at 62, Tyler Boyd for $4,000. Don't really see myself playing Irwin with all three of them healthy, but crazier things have happened. I'm only getting to the Bengals in larger field tournaments for me. If you want to get different in a 3-max, doing a stack with them might not be the worst case scenario you could do. Because you could run it back with Mark Andrews, and I don't think that'd be the worst thing in the world, but there's just better games, in my opinion, to get exposure to. But it is the late game, so if you want the late game hammer, I guess I'd understand that. Miami, if Tua was playing, they'd be quite interesting. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Trent Sherfield, but with Skylar Thompson, the QB, I don't have any interest here. And if I'm stacking Buffalo, I know typically I want a run back option, but this is one of those times where I think you can just stack and find another game to get other options from. So don't really have any interest in the Dolphins wide receivers. But the Vikings and the Giants, I have a ton of interest in these guys. We have the best receiver in football, Justin Jefferson, the most expensive player on the slate, $8,600. But I do think he is worth it. Nearly 10.5 targets per game, over 100 receiving yards, because you can pretty much just bank on that 3-point bonus on DK every single week with Justin Jefferson. Played well in this game just a handful of weeks ago. So yeah, kind of a lock on this slate for me. I know he's super expensive, same with Saquon, but it's really easy to fit those two in, especially if you go cheap at quarterback. I like Osborne over Thielen these days, and the DK price reflects that. So if I had to rank them, it's just exactly how they were priced. I know it kind of can be a question mark between Thielen and Osborne, but I think Osborne's the better play with bigger upside these days, because if Thielen does not score a touchdown to really make it worth it for you. And then the Giants receivers, they are free, and this is one of the best matchups you can ask for versus the Minnesota Vikings. So I will be loading up on these free and cheap wide receivers, and all three of them had a pretty solid game versus the Vikings not too long ago. Slayton's free. He's got big play upside. Isaiah Hodgins, it's just the prices are way too low. They should all see around 5+ targets, and it's just hard not to like them. Richie James might be the most popular option since he is the cheapest of the bunch, but man, I am going to be loading up on those cheap Giants receivers because they make things work. And since I'm stacking the Vikings, they make perfect run back options. And as you can see on the year, Vikings allowing nearly 200 receiving yards per game, the second most points per game in the wide receiver position in their 26 DVA versus the pass. So sign me up. They all look excellent. So moving back over to our build, we have Kirk Cousins. So we are 100% married to Justin Jefferson. No other way around it. And I also like TJ Hawkinson a lot. We have not talked about the tight end position, and I want at least 2 pass catchers with my quarterback in every single lineup. So we don't necessarily have to lock in a Thielen or Osborne. So we might leave that blank for now. But I think Osborne would be a likely candidate to make this lineup, but we could get 2 Giants receivers as well at cheap price points. So we're going to leave the rest blank for now. We'll talk tight ends and defenses, then we'll circle back and see what fits. And before we talk tight ends, I do want to mention, if you guys have never used PrizePicks and you're looking to sign up, you can use promo code CPEN. You can instant deposit match bonus up to $100. For those of you that don't live in legal betting states like me in Florida, this is kind of my workaway around it. I always have a blast on it, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. You can use the link down below in the description or the pinned comment, but make sure you use promo code CPEN and tell them I sent you. And I do like all of those Vikings and Giants overs, as I think that game kind of pops off. But anyway, let's talk some tight ends here. We have Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson as the 2 studs up top. Tyler Huntley is expected to start here, although I'm not sure that's 100% official yet by the time I'm recording this. I'm recording this a couple days in advance, but I know he practiced fully, so we know Huntley likes going Andrews' way. So I think he's a fine run back option if you are stacking the Bengals. But as far as a one-off, it's okay, but I think I'd rather just play TJ Hawkinson for $100 cheaper. He destroyed the Giants in this matchup just not too long ago, and ever since he arrived in Minnesota, he gets peppered with targets, so he's definitely the top tight end for me on this slate. I don't think he's an absolute must play, but I do like him a lot. Dawson Knox, if you're just looking for a pairing option with Josh Allen, there's nothing special about him, but if he does not score a touchdown, it's usually a pretty bad day. Likely, don't usually play him with Andrews playing, but when he was out last week in week 18, he played very well, but that's not going to be the case this time around. Gesicki's always lucky to get a target. Hayden Hurst, I don't think is a bad play at $3,100, just a pairing option with Joe Burrow, but I also don't mind him as a one-off either because he's just insanely cheap, and we can probably get 4 or 5 plus targets out of him. Daniel Bellinger, just if you're looking for a cheap stacking option in that game, he's free. He doesn't do much, but if he can get you 20, 25 yards and a couple of catches, that's not bad, and if he scores, you'll be really happy. And then I can't play Irv Smith or Durham Smythe or Smith, whatever it is. And then as far as the defenses are concerned, the 2 top options are the 2 most expensive. So good job, DraftKings. Bengals versus Baltimore with their backup quarterback, only a 16-point implied team total. And the Bills are a little bit cheaper, 13.5-point favorite at home, but the 15-point implied team total. Bills are my favorite defense. Bengals are my second. After that, it's probably Vikings and then Giants. It's just exactly how DK priced it, so they did a good job. Besides, I'd rather have the Bills than the Bengals, but other than that, it's a descending order of my favoritism, but it's really not that hard to fit the Bills in. They're not that expensive. And moving over to our build to finish this off, so we have Kirk Cousins. We need some run back options. I know we already have Saquon Barkley, but let's just grab probably Richie James. I don't mind getting Darius Slayton mixed in there as well. They're just really cheap and they make things work. I want to get TJ Hawkinson in as my tight end, which I know is a little much with the average salary remaining we had, but since we can have a defense left, it should not be that hard to fit. I prefer the Bills over the Bengals. That's kind of personal preference there. We now have $4,300 left for the last spot, which is not too bad. It kind of leaves us with another Giants wide receiver, but honestly, on this kind of a slate, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world you could do. Now, I kind of would want to get KJ Osborne in there because I only have 2 pass catchers with Kirk Cousins. So if we moved a couple of things around, I'm sure we could make it work. Like instead of playing Darius Slayton there, we could take him out, and I'm not sure. Yeah, we just missed out on Isaiah Hodgins, unfortunately. But honestly, if you really wanted the skill position players that we have right now, the only thing you'd have to do is take out Kirk Cousins and plug in Daniel Jones, and it's basically the same exact lineup. So I think you get the premise of where I'm going. But don't please copy and paste this. It's just something I'm building as we talk through it. Please build your own lineups, use your own judgment. And like I said in the beginning, just want to run the optimizer to see who is popping the most. And I had this running while we were talking, so let me just pull the builds tab here. And for the record, these ownerships are not for the 3-game slate, they're for the 6-game slate. But guys that are popping the most here, Josh Allen popped in a lot more than I thought. I thought we'd see more Daniel Jones, but I guess it must just be really easy to fit him in. Keep in mind, I don't have the correct settings put in, just running it raw, so that might be also reasons why some guys pop more than you'd think. But Jefferson, Barkley, Hodgins, Richie James, Bellingers. So yeah, as you can see, just absolutely loading up on those cheap options and the studs in that New York and Minnesota game, which is basically what we did in the video. We just didn't have Josh Allen, which afforded us a couple of extra expenditures elsewhere. But for the most part, it's kind of agreeing with what we thought, which is always nice when the projections agree with your thought process. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys for today's video. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.